The views and opinions on Where Did the Road Go belong to those making them. Do not mistake allowing freedom of speech for agreement. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Bill Illuminati, Allison Cook, No One, Yvonne Williams, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And this is a Wandering the Road episode, which we haven't done in a while. And I have along with me Mr. Christopher Ernst.
Hello, everybody. Super
Saxon Man.
Hello, hello.
And Brennan, whose last name I've forgotten.
Store.
I would go in that direction. I knew it was an OR. And then I'm like, I don't know what it is.
We got there in the end.
But we were just discussing, you came on previously for your book, which is called
A Strange Little Place, The Paranormal Secrets of Revelstoke, British Columbia.
And we did at least 2 parts on that book because it was a really good book and it was a good conversation. I wanted to bring you back. And you have a new podcast coming out, or just starting?
Yeah, we soft launched on the 2nd of September, Fear Daily. It's a daily horror fiction show.
We talked about this last time you were on. That is an imposing amount of content you're going to have to create.
Yes, I've written 600 pages of short stories so far.
Oh, wow.
I am written up until the middle of November. So I'm currently working on finishing November and then December and on until the heat death of the universe, or the show, someone buys the show and allows me to not have to do it anymore.
All right. Well, that's ambitious.
That'll work.
We will see. Response has been pretty good so far. We haven't done a big sort of a big push yet. We're kind of saving that for back half of September, first half of October. But yeah, it's been cool, man. It's been weird to have it out in the world. You know, we've been talking. Brandon and I, Brandon Scheck-Snyder, who also hosts Southern Gothic, we're working on this, and we've been talking about it since January. And to actually have it out there is it's both wonderful and terrifying.
Excellent.
How long are the episodes?
Usually from, I would say, about 20 minutes is about the average.
Well, that's pretty long.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, the stories run anywhere from 800 words to about, I think the longest one is 3,000. I think probably about 1,500 words is sort of the like the median between the two. But yeah, it's longer. Yeah, about 20 minutes I think is where we land, and it feels long. I'll tell you when I'm writing them, it feels plenty long.
Man, I could not do it. My brain could not handle that.
It's funny when you kind of put yourself in that position and you think, oh, I guess we're going to do this. Because there was a period where, I wrote a lot in the very beginning because ADHD, and then it stopped feeling real. So I just kind of drifted from it. And then the deadline was suddenly real, and I'd only written something like 60 stories. So about a month and a half. And I just panic wrote almost double, like almost another 60 stories. And I never really wrote fiction. I'd never really written fiction before this. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to pull it off or not. But as I say, you put enough pressure on someone, turns out you just figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, jumping in is sometimes the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm just glad I don't have to narrate or produce it.
What was that?
Right.
So I'm just glad I don't have to narrate or produce it. I just Brandon is narrating and producing it. I just get to write it and then walk away.
Okay, all right. And your other podcast, because you can't have just one.
No, God forbid. But if I had spare time, Soraya, then I could think about things. And who the hell needs that?
What's the other one?
The Ghost Story Guys.
Okay,
I've been doing that for about 8 years now with Paul Bestel, telling true life stories of the paranormal, then making jokes.
And I think we're scheduled to have me on there at some point soon.
Yeah, you're going to be on our 200th episode.
Oh, okay. I'm sure you told me that, but it was more than a day ago, and so that's gone.
That's fair. In all fairness, I don't even know that I did. I am, with Fear having come out right now, I am right in the middle of so many different things that I have generally don't even know what day it is.
Yeah.
So it's possible I didn't tell you.
Not having any kind of fixed things happening on fixed days, I tend to not know what day it is a lot of times. And it's either a good thing or a bad thing. Like I'll think it's like late in the week and I'll find out it's Tuesday and be like, oh, good. Or I'll think it's Tuesday and find out it's Thursday. Like, well, today I thought it was Wednesday and found out it was Thursday, and I'm like, oh, I'm almost to the weekend.
And then if you work for yourself, weekends have no meaning. So
exactly.
It's like,
right. Exactly.
Here's 2 more days, which will just be more on the treadmill of life until such time as I fall off.
But this weekend is a particularly busy one. That's why I was kind of like, oh, it's already the weekend, because it's we're recording this incidentally on the 19th of September, and I don't know what date it is where you are, Brennan, because you're like in a different atmosphere or something on the other side of Canada. But yeah, like tomorrow I have to record this week's Last Exit. I'm going to see a co-host who I haven't seen in a year and a half, I think, because she's going to be in town. So I got to do that first, and then record Last Exit, and then Saturday's actually my birthday, and Chris and I are going to be interviewing Robert Guffey.
Yep.
And then Sunday we have a band playing, and in between that, there's all kinds of other little things I have to get done.
Of course.
So when I look at and go, oh, it's Thursday, I'm pretty much out of time to do things now. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But do you have to drive around a lot? Because if you do,
Yes.
then maybe you see another weird green flash.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too. That because there's been 3 things with that. So I posted this to patrons, and Brennan, you probably haven't seen it, but you, Saxon and Chris have. And I was driving down this road going to a computer customer, and this green light just shoots across the road.
Oh.
And I went, oh, the hell was that? And I'm like, it was probably like someone with like a laser gun or something like that. And so, but I turned around because it was so distinct. And I'm like, well, maybe it was like a motion sensor thing. So I turn around, I go back, nothing. I turn around and go back the same way where I saw it, nothing. And I'm like, well, what the hell? And then a few seconds later, I see a green orb up in front of me. This did not show up on my webcam. The green light that went across the road did, but the orb did not. And because it was a very distinct, self-illuminated green light that was the same color as the light that went across the road. And I'm like, well, what was that? And I figured I'd find out as I got closer, but when I got closer, there were just trees there. And
Yeah.
so
And it's weird because the way it looks too is that it's like, I'm looking at it now, it's almost like you can see an orb on the end, either that or it's like it almost looks like a beam. And somebody described it as maybe like a laser pointer, but you can see this very definite like there is a circular kind of blob ending to it where it either is hitting the road or it's like a blob of light. Yeah.
And it's now my roommate Natalie insists that it is her friend has a device that creates a beam very much like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's entirely possible, but why? And she's like, well, they're usually motion sensitive. I'm like, well, why didn't it go off all the other times I've driven by this house now like 50 times since this happened? And never seen it again. And one of the things is I had a friend of mine who's very, very practical. He's a carpenter. He doesn't really believe in this type of stuff. And I showed it to him. I'm like, what is this? And he's like, weird. And I'm like, okay, but what do you think it is? He's like, maybe someone behind those pine trees with a like laser pointer type of thing. And I'm like, okay. And we're looking at the overhead view of it. And I'm like, okay, I could see that. So then the next time I went down, I realized behind those pine trees is a drop off into a ravine.
Oh,
yeah.
So there's no space on the other side of those pine trees. Those pine trees are right on the edge.
Yeah, there isn't. And looking at it again, with whatever, as much expertise as I can give as somebody who's a professor of film and video, analyzing the video and the lighting, it's just really odd because for the intensity of how the light is showing up, there should be something that we're seeing that is at least some artifact of the light in the shadows to the left of it.
Right.
It's like it comes out of nowhere that, there would have been something indicating, if the light was being shown between like the trees or something would have caught back there. Yeah, it's really weird.
And it's only on like 3 frames of the dash cam, which I didn't even think to check till like 3 days later. And I'm like, is that still on there? That should still be on there. And I'm like, there it is. Okay, at least I know I didn't imagine it. You know, if nothing else, I definitely it looked exactly like what I remembered. And I'm like, okay, I couldn't find the orb, unfortunately, but that was also very small and in the distance. So I don't want these people thinking I'm like staking out their house.
Right.
Because every time I go by, I kind of slow down and I'm looking. And when Natalie said that little laser device that her friend has, she's like, maybe they put it by the trees to alert people to animals or something. Maybe it's motion sensor if an animal happened to run right in front of it. So today when I went by slowly, I mean, I didn't see anything. But again, I don't want to like stop, and like get out and go like search through their trees.
Yeah. And would it be weird to be walking down that road?
That was actually something I was considering. I'm like, what if I just parked down at the end and walked down the road?
You're taking a stroll. Yeah.
I'd need to find the time to actually do that, but I might end up doing that just to see if I can see it. Again, though, I don't want to be too much looking in their stuff. I'm half tempted to just go up to the
metalhead who's peering into our trees.
They might put more lasers out to detect you walking down the road.
I need more countermeasures.
So then, yesterday, I drove up that road. I figure that road is a road I can take to get to Route 89, which I drive regularly. And it's one road over from the road I typically take, so I just figure, well, I'll just keep taking it, because maybe I'll see it again and be able to determine what caused it. Because I'm totally open to a perfectly prosaic explanation. I don't know about the orb, but that first light, I mean, there could be a prosaic explanation. It could be one of those laser things. I don't know. I'm curious more than anything else. I'm half tempted to just stop at their house and be like, do you know what this is?
But I was thinking that. I was thinking, how weird would it be? Like, what is that? Because, again, I'm not a great barometer for social acceptability here. But is it weird to knock on someone's door and say, look, I just saw a green thing in front of my truck. Do you have some kind of security? But even then, like, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Do you have some kind of security system set up across your road for reasons?
Right. Exactly.
In case the predator turns up? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. How much traffic usually even out there, Soraya? I mean, doesn't seem like it's that busy there.
No. I don't know why it would be there. That's the other thing. There's a winery on the other side, so there's no houses or anything there. Although I did notice today they had installed, or were in the process of installing, a solar-powered camera pointing in that direction on the winery.
Huh.
And I'm like, I didn't know they made these. They're probably super expensive, but that's neat.
It's a trail cam to catch you because they keep seeing this stop by. There's this big dude keeps going by. We got to catch him. We don't know what's going on.
And then, but yesterday I drove home that way. And as I'm driving up the road, I see something to my left. This is it would be between where I saw the orb and where this light was. I see something to my left. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Because I thought it was a deer running. And it's a giant owl flying along the side of my car.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like,
wow.
And much better than a deer, But not on the dash cam because it was to the side and it was dark. I literally just saw the shadow of it, but it was huge. So I'm assuming a big barn owl or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's Mike Cleland in a suit.
Yeah, that could be.
Got him.
So, I mean, I figure most of this stuff has prosaic explanations, but sometimes the prosaic stuff is still weird.
Well, I mean, I remember that when I first saw the green light, like I mentioned in the book, there was up in the sky. I was like a teenager and we were just outside. It was New Year's Eve, sometime in the 90s. We were out shoveling at 3 a.m. because we're big old nerds and there's nothing else to do. And all of a sudden, just there was a green flash above the mountain. Would have been like 10,000 feet up maybe. And then when we turned to look at it again, it happened, and it just the air turned green. And
that's freaky.
Yeah, and then I thought I was the only one, and then I had an old classmate of mine reach out and say that a few years after that, maybe they were walking home, and it was mid-afternoon, and it was the same thing. This green light just lit up everything, and they had no idea where it came from. Yeah, it's bizarre. Something about we've even on Ghost Story Guys, we've had a few stories of weird. The green light that doesn't seem to have any obvious source, like there was, a few different stories. So like it's, if it is prosaic, okay, fine. But if it's not, I mean, it's really like in line with kind of other things like that.
Yeah. But yeah, Natalie said that those things are small enough that I might not see it just driving by. And I'm like, I mean, my best case scenario is these people call me for computer help. And then while I'm fixing their computer, I can be like, hey, so this happened.
Yeah.
Or we go together, Ocean's 11 style. We break into their house. We screw up their computer so they call you. And then we ask.
Yes, that's much better than just going to ask them. Good idea.
Yeah. See, I'm always thinking over here. Always thinking.
But I mean, I don't know. Maybe the whole point of having that experience, prosaic or not, was to get me driving down that road instead of the road I normally took.
Sure.
Well, I mean, there was a woman I knew back home. It wasn't a green light, but she used to take the same route home from work every day, or every night rather. She worked nights at a senior citizen home. And one night she had, I mean, this was much more direct, but she had this like intense feeling that she should take a different, turn onto the main road at a different intersection than the one she usually does.
Yeah.
And she got smoked. She got T-boned hard by some drunk kid in his car. But if he had hit her at the usual intersection where she turned, which would have been a little bit further down the road, he would have picked up that much more speed and it probably would have killed her.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's
Interesting.
definitely been times where I've known not to take certain roads or felt like I should slow down. And because nothing happens, I don't know if that's because I took that road or slowed down, or if it was nothing and it didn't really matter. You know, you can't go back and check both options.
Right.
All right, let me restore my life back to that 5 minutes ago and see what would have happened if I went this way.
Restore the quick save.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's the only weird thing that's happened recently, except for a really loud bang on the roof of my barn. But that could have been, I don't know what that actually could have been. I was walking in from outside, and as I was walking by the creepy barn, there was an enormously loud bang on the roof, and I was like,
"Ooh,
well, that was loud." And then no animal noises, because I mean, my first suspicion is squirrel.
Yeah,
but you'll hear them if they jump on the roof, and then because you'll hear them running, and I'm like, did a branch fall? And I walked over there, and all I had was my phone light. And I'm like, I don't see anything. I'm like, should I be walking over here with just a phone light? Because if it is a bigger animal, maybe I don't want to know. But again, I don't think that was anything paranormal. It definitely was a little like unusual because I've heard, there's a walnut tree there, so it'll occasionally drop nuts on it. But that's bang and then it rolls off. Or you'll hear the squirrel scurry across or the raccoon scurry across. Not just a loud, solid bang. So I might find a branch at some point and be like, oh, that was it. But I was a little nervous about walking into the dark with just the phone light. It's like if I had something with a beam where I could actually project it, like maybe a green flashlight that I could be.
There you go.
That's the other thing. Like green's such a weird color for anything to be. Usually lasers are red. More often than not, I would think. When you see these laser activated things, they're red.
Yeah, I was thinking too. I mean, if it was something that was like laser activated, I feel like that would just not be visible.
Yeah.
I would think that more like an infrared kind of thing, right? Like something because I feel like it defeats, if it's trying to sort of catch the things as they go past, I feel like being visible is sort of counterproductive.
True.
So I've been sitting here looking up like trail cams, trying to see if what kind of sensors they use. And I can't find anything that looks like a laser like that. Their sensors are just like you're talking about, Brennan. They're infrared, and they wouldn't show up as a green, almost like a laser beam looking thing like that. Even the ones that are motion censored to trip are still using like a field. It's not like a single beam or anything like that, if that makes sense. Because I was like, I wonder if it could be something like that. But I can't find anything that looks like that.
So the one Natalie sent me that her friend has, it looks like it just projects a single beam. And it's a green outdoor highway warning laser light.
Oh, well.
Now that's, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
That seems like it's going to cause more troubles than it's going to fix, though. I mean,
yeah.
Oh God, a green light crash. I just feel like this is the warning is about things are about to go real bad for you. That's about the only.
Unless people have crashed into a ravine or something. I didn't realize that there was a ravine behind there. But yeah, you're right. Like that would be. I would probably go investigate if I saw that and fall into the ravine.
Yeah,
right.
That's
Exactly.
Like the light equivalent of Homer running into Bart's room with, "Do you want to see my new chainsaw and hockey mask?" You're causing more problems than you're fixing.
Well, and I wonder about, because, I was thinking about, if you've got people driving down your driveway, some of those places where the country roads, they'll have that like sensor or whatever. But, in the the FAA, like it's a serious felony if you point a laser pointer at an airplane because
Right.
you can blind the pilot. And that they don't mess around with stuff like that. So I can't imagine that's acceptable to have that pointing towards a driver in a car. So
Well, it was
I don't know.
but it was
It seems
across
like-
the road.
yeah,
Then this says outdoor 3W rotation bird scare repellent laser.
huh.
So I don't.
Did you say bird scare?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I don't know if we Google bird scare repellent laser. I just want to know what the beam actually looks like. It's not coming up as the predictive stuff. Repellent laser sounds like a power metal band.
Yeah, right.
The first picture I'm getting on Google here very much looks like Zardoz. Like it's this insane sort of face-looking green thing that appears to be chasing cats and dogs away from it. It's I don't think it's intended to be as dramatic as it is, but it's very impressive.
I mean, I wonder.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, hey, I can Zardoz away the animals in my neighborhood. I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah, I mean,
before, but now
looking
I
at
want that.
these, it looks like a little security cam, and it definitely is the same color green.
Yeah. So it's also listed as a scarecrow type of thing. I'm wondering if, I mean, it looks like it's coming from the left side of the car, but what if they have it in the winery?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know
That's
how that would be coming out that way, like from the way it looks in the video. But
Is this the Bird X one we're looking at?
I was looking at a high-tech solution for bird control in your orchard.
Oh, okay. Because I'm looking at this Bird X one, and I mean, it's essentially there is sort of green lasers cutting across the image, but there's also a lot of other sort of stuff going on, a lot of like dots and very kind of tool show light display.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like it's not just the one thing, because like that makes more sense.
Yeah.
If you've got like a bunch of things happening, then okay, fine, I can see that. But
Right.
just suddenly here's a bolt of lightning across the road. That does not seem very cool.
And yeah, no, you're right about that. That's very true. It looks like it's like a weird scatter shot
Scattered.
type
Yeah.
pattern.
Yeah. There may be multiple kinds of it, though. Some of these
Yeah, that's true.
look more like the single laser, that's mounted sort of like a security camera would be, and it just pivots around.
I don't know.
I think if I were trying to protect a whole lot of agriculture or a vineyard, I would go with the scattered one, not the single laser one.
I think maybe I need to take a walk down that road and maybe look at the vineyard side, or even just go talk to people at the vineyard and see if they have something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, because if they have that would explain what I saw. It doesn't explain, again, the orb down the road, but I feel like that could be the other taking advantage of an already weird type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the Faye going, are you seeing this thing up the road?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I have no idea if anyone else, I assume other people have this experience, and I've never brought it up because it's a subtle experience. But have any of you been in a situation where you're like in a quiet room, or you're like going to sleep and it's completely quiet, and then suddenly a noise you didn't know existed stops?
Interesting.
You mean like a background hum or something like that you weren't aware of?
Right, but there is like I know there's no background hums in my house. You know what I mean? Like I know
Right.
all those noises. And especially in the
Yeah.
winter, I have nothing running when I'm sleeping. It's dead quiet. But every once in a while, I'll be laying there, and it's like suddenly I'll realize a sound that was there is missing, but I don't know what that sound was.
And you don't mean that like when a frequency suddenly dies
No.
thing.
No, it's like
No,
the sound
okay.
just disappears, and suddenly now it's really silent. And it's like,
Something that's
But wasn't it-
outside. Yeah.
wasn't it silent
I
a moment
have.
ago? Like, what's happening here?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always like very Oz effect-ish, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, but nothing really weird ever accompanies it.
I have, though. I don't think I've ever really thought too much about it. And maybe that's the sort of, me being predisposed towards, weirdness as normal in general from my childhood. But yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. That sounds like something that I've experienced, at least enough to have some sort of recollection. I guess I always just sort of assumed it was some shift or something, I never really thought much about it. And then maybe that means it's not, as significant as what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen a lot, but every great once in a while, and it's such a dramatic thing where it's like, whoa, everything just got quiet. But I thought it was already quiet. What just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't.
Mhm.
And maybe
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
something neurological more than actual sound. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would assume that, and I think it's probably safe to say that there are tests that have been done, similar to the invisible gorilla, but with, what you're listening to, what you're hearing, especially if you're in an area where the noise around you is, I guess, familiar, or there are other things you're concentrating on.
Right. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like the occasionally when I lay down and if I close my eyes and I feel like there's light shining on my eyes.
Yeah.
And the only other person that seemed to be like, oh yeah, that was Jeremy Vaney. He was like, yeah, that happens to me too. And I'm like, okay, good. It's not just me, because none of these experiences I think are unique to me, but some of them are probably a little more
Right.
rare than others.
And that's where I'd come in and I'd say, in my experience, that means that, you're having, as marked by some of your Kundalini activity, that your subtle organs, part of, the subtle body, are developing. And so it's like, when you have, I don't know, when you have as a child a sense that is developing, sort of weird things happen. But it's, this would be across like lifetimes and, something that is much more of a different type of mystical experience. Yeah.
And sometimes with the light, I think I just left the reading light on. And every great once in a while I did.
Right. It could be that too.
And I'll be like, oh, I left the reading light on. Then I open my eyes and it's dark. But every once in a while, it's like, oh, yeah, I did. I actually did. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, and the light thing you sent, Chris, doesn't seem to resemble the light that I saw that's on that video.
Yeah, this was the thing. Yeah, I put in the chat, new laser deters wild birds, and it's something different, but this is one of the weird lasers that they're making for birds.
Now it makes me think I should stop and ask at the winery. I mean, because that's
probably safer than squatching around in the trees.
Right, exactly. Plus, I mean, that's a public place. It's a they sell wine, so I can walk in and be like, hey, this green light, was this you?
Well, but you could have more fun squatching around in the trees.
That's true. That's
Valid
true.
point. Yep.
Which one's the better story? That's all I put out there.
I mean, one ends in wine, but the other does end in squatching. So, yeah. I remember we had this thing once. The apartment we live in here in Victoria it's not all the time haunted, but there are certain apartments that just have kind of a cast to them, and every now and again something will pass through. And one time when the people above us had moved out, we heard, and we thought the new neighbors had already moved in. We heard this incredible stomping up there, just insane. Like something was, the football players do the drill.
Yeah.
With it was like that.
Sure.
With the tires.
Oh,
It was
wow.
just like boom, 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 boom across the floor. And I thought, what the hell are they doing up there? And then we found out they didn't move in until the week after.
Wow.
And I really wanted to go upstairs and say, hey, has anything weird happened to your apartment since you moved in? And my wife practically dive tackled me. She's like, nope, you're not doing that. That is not happening. You can screw up as many dinner parties as you want with your weird stories, but we're not weirding out the neighbors.
Well, maybe that would be good for them, though.
Well, they moved out fairly quickly. So, I mean, maybe it would have saved them some trouble. I don't know. The people up there have kids now, though, and haven't heard anything. So maybe it was just, again, this building seems to be a lot of passing stuff here.
Huh.
That is interesting, though. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt anybody. Just, certain places that seem haunted at different times. The house that we live in was built a long time ago. And when we bought it, we just thought it was a cool house. And then after the fact, I found out some just kind of work colleagues from around town had been in the house with the previous owners, and they thought it was haunted. And, obviously I've had a lot of strange experiences in my life. Nothing remotely, what I would refer to as haunting has ever happened in that house for me. It's just very cozy and comfortable and comforting. So I always kind of wonder, I'm like, does it depend on, it kind of goes back to some of our poltergeist discussions, I suppose, and things like that. But, I think some people turn the stuff off. Some people turn it on. Sometimes it's like a sigh almost in between or something.
Well,
Sure.
Yeah. I sometimes wonder, too, if just certain people if there's like a mismatch between, say, like your antenna and whatever is putting this thing out.
Ooh, I like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like sometimes there's, trying to think, there's an example. Well, I've got a friend, actually. We haven't spoken in years now, so I guess we're not friends anymore. But I used to know a guy, we should say.
I think that
I just
depends
really-
on the person if a few years matter.
I think in this case it matters. That was me having a whole realization in like 5 seconds on air as I was speaking. Just did a little self-therapy there. But anyways, I would feel things and he would get nothing. The only time that I think we ever had any like an experience that happened together was we were driving. It was late one night. I used to be up all the like driving around Victoria at night just for something to do. And he wanted to go check out this one used car lot on the edge of town. So we were bombing around about 1 a.m. And I was telling him about this weird experience that had happened over the phone earlier in the day. I had been on the phone with another friend, and this voice broke in and just started kind of going.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah. And both my friend and I, we thought it was each other.
Right.
And it happened in the daytime. So we hung up the phone. I called him back and I said, hey, what was that? And he said, well, I thought it was you. So, cut to 12 hours later, I'm telling another friend about this as we're driving around. And as we were driving, we were listening to the police scanner because, again, I'm a giant nerd and there's nothing else going on. And right in the middle of a call, the dispatcher calling someone, it cut out and this very deep voice went, and then it cut right back into the police channel. And no one on the police band reacted whatsoever to that voice, but my friend and I both heard it.
Jeez.
Yeah. Only time he and I had a mutual experience. And, actually, no, that's not true. There was one other time, but there were 3 of us present, and 2 of us are very kind of tuned into that kind of stuff. So I think we sort of dragged them along with us. But generally speaking, when it was just me and him, nothing.
Well, what was the other experience?
So it was the 3 of us. We were at my place. We were watching a movie. My wife had gone to bed, and so we're sitting there on the couch, and all 3 of us hear the bedroom door open, and we hear my wife's sort of feet padding down the hallway to the bathroom. And the next noise that should have happened should have been the bathroom door closing, but instead the front door closed. Except the front door hadn't been open, and in order for anyone to move from the back of the apartment to the front, they would have had to walk right past us, but no one did. So it was like we heard it just because one of those things where it doesn't add up, right? It's totally normal. We know the bedroom door. I know that sound. Footsteps in the hallway. I've heard it 100 times. But then the door that shakes is not the door that should have. And we all just sat there looking at each other. No one had any idea what to do. So I got up and checked the bedroom. My wife was in bed, sound asleep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, hadn't stirred at all. And I said, there's this apartment. The old apartment was a more permanent situation. It was kind of, there was always something around. But this, as I say, it kind of comes and goes here.
Well, I think that's how this stuff works anyway. And I think there's environmental factors that are both extra, I don't want to use the word extraterrestrial when I'm talking about like galactic rays and solar, radiation and stuff, along with stuff that is interacting with the Earth plus us, all in this mismatch of like these fields, and sometimes things are more obvious and sometimes they're less obvious. And of course, whatever state of mind you're in, liminal stuff and all this stuff comes together to play a part. I mean, my experiences seem to come, like the big ones seem to come in waves. Like a bunch of stuff will happen and then nothing will really happen for a while.
Yep.
And I didn't realize that till I started working on the book, and I was like, oh, all this stuff happened like within like 4 days. Like, what the hell? I had them all separated out in my mind.
Well, that's what it was like for me, because when I first started working on Strange, it was 12 years ago now that I started doing the interviews for that book, and I had a couple experiences when I was younger, but once I really started, I read like something like 50, 60 books on the paranormal. I was interviewing these people all the time, and I was working in what turned out to be a really haunted building here in Victoria. And it all kind of just came together. And I saw 2 shadow people at 2 different times. And I'd never seen them before. At the time, I didn't even know what they were. I didn't even know it was a thing. But once the book was finished and out, and especially once I moved out of that office building, once I didn't have that job anymore, my sort of encounters with this stuff, especially at that level, went way, way down.
Sure.
It was just like I was like this hyper focus, and then all of a sudden, once I wasn't like quite as deeply focused on it, it kind of lost interest in me as well, or something like that.
Yeah, well, that happens too. Okay, so here's another thing that I've had happen that I don't know how to explain. But Keel mentions it, and one of the things Keel mentioned that I don't think I've ever experienced, but I know Tim Renner has, is being out deep in the woods and hearing a car door slam. Which, yes, when you're not near anywhere there should be a car, that's a weird thing, and Keel would talk about that. The other one Keel would talk about, I didn't experience until a few years ago, and it's always in It's almost always when I have my window open, I'm sitting in my back room where I spend most of the time, and it'll be at night, middle of the night, and it will sound like a car spinning its tires on rubber. Or I'm spinning its tires on rubber. Spinning its tires on like wet pavement.
Okay.
But there's no engine sound. I think the first time I heard it was the same time I had the weird owl experience with Gwendolyn. Because so that experience happened when we were talking on the phone, and she heard I forget what kind of owl it is, but it makes a sound almost like a horse whinny.
Oh, okay.
And neither of us had ever heard it before, and she was hearing it and didn't know it was an owl. And she's like, "What is that noise?" And it wasn't coming in over the phone. She had it on speaker, and she's like, "You're not hearing that?" I'm like, "No." And I had one earbud in and one out, and I'm like, I don't hear it. And then a few minutes later, I went, "Oh, now I hear it." And she's like, "No, now it's not making any noise." And I realized it was coming from outside my window. So it stopped making the noise where she was in Ohio and started making the noise outside my window.
Oh, I don't know if I remember this story.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, that's weird. Like, that's really, because I've never heard this owl noise before. Because she saw the thing. She's like, "It's an owl," and I'm like, okay. She's like, "It sounds like a horse going wee."
Oh,
That's funny.
And
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Interrupt.
Go ahead.
Did you post this online somewhere?
I
like
don't.
on Reddit?
I don't think. No, definitely not.
Because I had a vague memory, and I just went digging, and someone from upstate New York dropped a story into the r/paranormal subreddit about something that happened in 2020, and they heard what sounded. I'm trying to like condense it. It's quite lengthy, but they were out walking in the woods, and they heard what sounded like a machine mimicking an animal, but not just one animal. Like it was trying to mimic a bunch at once. Bees, birds, everything, but poorly. You couldn't listen to one sound and say, "This is an animal." It was as if all sounds all at once, but a mimic of them. And they sort of liken it to those lousy AI voices that flooded YouTube. And then the reason I drop it in is it went from the sound of people talking quietly in a restaurant to a noisy, busy restaurant, but the same with those same mechanical animal sound. And then they saw something black and fuzzy, like they saw a cat in the grass, and there's also a mention of an owl here as well. So yeah, it's not quite the same, but it was 10 in the morning. They said it was a weird time to see an owl, sort of in conjunction with all these other things.
It is a screech owl that has the whinny call.
Okay.
Let's see if I can make it play.
Yeah, that.
I mean, it's adorable, but I wouldn't want to hear it by surprise.
Yeah.
The
It
cat
reminds me of like some fox sounds too, maybe.
Yeah, the cat is now giving me one hell of a look. He's like, "What the hell was that?" But so anyway, she's hearing it, and I can't hear it through the phone, despite it being on speaker. But she could actually track it down and could see the owl. It's a fairly small owl, if I remember right. And I'm like, okay. And then, like I said, then I started hearing it outside my window, and it stopped where she was. And it's like, and I've never heard that before either. Neither of us have ever heard that owl noise before. And so weird. It's like, okay, that's weird. Since then, I have heard the owl noise. Like, I've heard it other times. But that was the first time I ever heard it. And the fact that it literally stopped where she was and then started where I was. And then also, I think it was the same night, I'm talking to her, and I'm hearing what sounds like tires spinning on rubber. I see I did it again. On like wet ground, like whoosh.
Yeah.
And it's like 2 a.m, and it's like, what is it? The neighbor? What's the neighbor doing that's making that sound? And every great once in a while, I'll hear it. And I came across a thing where John Keel talked about it. That's one of the sounds that sometimes get associated with high strangeness encounters, but nothing else happened. I mean, the owl thing was pretty damn weird. But every once in a while, I will hear that sound outside, and I'm like, and if I go outside, it stops, so I can't track where it's coming from. I can just track that I'm hearing it through my window.
Yeah.
And it's a very distinct sound. It's not like a quiet sound.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Huh.
But weird stuff happened with Gwendolyn anyway. I mean, she was just a magnet for that stuff. Probably still is, I assume. But, I mean, there was the night I was doing the show with Sheryl Lee and someone else, and Sheryl Lee was hearing stuff that Gwendolyn was hearing while she was trying to go to sleep, not on the show.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
because they got they heard the same phrases being spoken, and it was like, what? We did a whole show on it. I want to say it's called like either invisible circles or robot circles, because that was one of the phrases.
Oh, I think I remember that.
Yeah, it was a really weird phrase. And Shirley's live on the show. We're recording, and she keeps getting distracted, and we're like, what's going on? She's like, I keep hearing voices in my headset, and the last one just said robot circles. And the next day I'm talking to Gwendolyn, and I'm like, so this weird thing happened with Shirley. And she's like, oh my God, I heard robot circles. And I'm like, what do you mean you heard robot circles? She's like, I was trying to go to sleep, and I heard that. And I was like, all right, we need to do a show on this. So that
I totally remember the robot circles thing.
But I mean, like, I don't even know what to make of that type of stuff.
Right.
It kind of reminds me of a story I heard just before the pandemic all came down. I had a very strange phone conversation with a guy. He's I can't say his name. I won't tell you guys off air, but he's at the time was a fairly well-known rapper.
Okay.
And he found me. He actually saw me. I did a round table with Sapphire Sandalo and Derek from Monsters Among Us. I was kind of they needed one guy to fill out the bench, so I got asked. And afterwards, this dude reached out to me, and he had something like 1.5 million followers on Instagram, and he wanted my phone number so he could talk to me. And I thought, well, sure. I mean, you got more to lose than I do, buddy. So
Right.
We had this conversation, but he told me this story, and it was one of the weirdest things. He said that he had been contacted through social media by one of his listeners, and it was a woman, and she wanted an address so she could send him something. And he said normally he doesn't do that, but for some reason, he felt compelled to give her his address. So he did. He gave her this address, and she sent him a box of candles and a few other things. And he thought, okay, fine, whatever. He put the candles in, I think he's got like a candle thing in the bedroom, whatever. So he put them there. Didn't think too much about it. But then he had a buddy over, and his wife was out of town, and both him and his buddy were they were hanging out in the bedroom, and both of them heard this woman's voice speaking to them while the candles were lit. And they went over to the candles, and they realized it was like she was praying.
Huh.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But it was coming from the candles she had given them. They were both hearing it, and they were both absolutely terrified. What I thought was really interesting is they just totally by instinct, they took the candles out back, like out to the backyard, and they peed on them.
Okay.
It was just that was their response. Like, okay, we're just gonna, for some reason they thought we're gonna do this, and it stopped. Yeah. The sound stopped, so they tossed out the candles. That was that. But I was talking to a brujo who we sometimes sort of go to for information. And he was saying that it was fascinating that they did that, because he said that is actually old counter magic.
That would make sense. Totally. Yeah.
But they surprised. They didn't know that. They just, it was just like,
instinctively did it.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the closest thing I've sort of heard to something along those lines.
I would have grabbed every recording device I had and tried to record the sounds.
Yeah.
I think you are perhaps considerably more sharp than this young gentleman. If I were to send you, I will send you pictures, and you will see, and you'll say, "Oh yes, I am a much more evolved life form than this young man."
What was one of the other things I wanted to bring up here? I don't know. Let's go with a simpler one here. Have you guys seen how they want to bring back the woolly mammoth?
Not lately, but
no.
It's kind of fascinated by that.
So there's a recent article talking about how but they're not bringing back the woolly mammoth. They are changing a gene. This is the funny thing. They're changing like part of the DNA or something of an actual elephant to make it more so it can sustain colder temperatures. So it's not really the woolly mammoth. And the thing that always gets me, of course, in the article is a picture of these woolly mammoths covered in snow, and I'm like, woolly mammoths did not live in cold environments. They lived in the same environments that elephants today do.
Mm-hmm.
But we have always had this association with woolly mammoths with the Ice Age, and they're woolly, so obviously they could survive in cold temperatures, but the fact that we found them in cold temperatures is actually a mystery, because they did not survive in those temperatures. A lot of them were obviously flash frozen. I know a lot of people know that. But again, here's this, we're going to bring back the woolly mammoth. It's like, that's not what you're doing.
Right.
Like, and I don't blame the scientists on it, but the way it gets reported.
Sure. It's the sensational way. And
it's somehow going to fix the climate, because they'll be acclimated to colder temperatures. And I'm like, how is that going to help the climate? Like, it never actually explained that part. It's like, it'll help with Climate issues. It's like making elephants that can withstand the cold will help with climate issues. Like what?
We're going to give all the squirrels guns, and that's really going to help us with the traffic problem.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
Oh man.
We already got the deer for those.
Yeah, like I don't want the climate to change and need to be genetically altered to survive in it. I would rather it just, mellow out a little bit and let me stay the way I am.
Or go
if that's
full
the
Jurassic
implication.
Park and make
Yeah.
some really do it. Like go for it, man.
Climate change is going to happen no matter what we do, whether we're here or not. Climate change has been drastic through the entire history of Earth, and we're in an unusually calm period. That's the thing I think people don't always realize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Particularly in terms of solar craziness and cosmic craziness.
Yeah, and the sun has been
meaning,
going nuts the last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as an aside, like that's kind of freaking me out a little bit, to be honest. I saw another article maybe 3 days ago that the Northern Lights may still be visible in the upper United States for a couple of years.
So,
that's not a normal thing that's supposed to happen, and that's all solar activity.
Yeah, so
it hasn't been like this for a while though, has it?
No.
Yeah.
So there's a YouTube channel I actually recommended. I don't necessarily agree with everything he has on the channel, but he has interesting news articles and stuff. It's called Suspicious Observers. And he reports, he does like a 2-minute daily report on solar activity and things like, papers that support different ideas that have been published. So and he puts the links to all that stuff up. So that's one of the cool things about it. So even if you don't always agree with his interpretation, it has that information right there. And one of the things he was showing was that there was like a big X-flare flare that went off, not directed at Earth. It was just going to barely glance us. And his big thing is that we're coming up to a point where the Earth's magnetic field is going to weaken and then flip, and it's going to cause mayhem. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Because if you look 6,000 years ago, the last time this happened, it didn't seem like there was a lot of chaos. You know what I mean? So, but 12,000 years ago was the end of the Younger Dryas. But he said when that X-class just glanced us, and all the solar scientists are saying this isn't going to do anything, it actually supercharged the Earth's magnetic field, and there were auroras seen as far south as Texas.
Yeah.
And he's putting this down to this is the weakening of the Earth's magnetic field because it's approaching its flip point. I think the official stance on that is it's not going to flip for another 200 years or something. But if it is getting weaker in any way, we're looking at potentially more damage from active solar areas. And I've always wondered if we're moving through different parts of the galaxy that might have different effects on the planet, on the sun, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And it's such a long... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just the very fact that I don't think we know how really, cosmic place and space does affect us, or the, really the connections, I think, that there are between even the planets in our solar system and how they impact each other in ways, that I think are probably beyond what instruments can tell, in more subtle spaces.
Yeah. Because you think, the whole galaxy moves too.
Yep.
And of course, the solar system itself is in motion, as all the planets, orbit around the sun. And, you can pass through a lot more cosmic rays or whatever else, radiation going this way, radio waves from a pulsar going that way. Those aren't necessarily things you see. So, who knows what we'll end up passing through. I'm always kind of curious about what that means.
It's a trope. The whole, I don't know if you guys ever came across, it was like a 60s, 70s kind of, I want to say like Scandinavian New Age thing, the monastic ring, the photon belt theory. Yeah. And, it's funny, I came across it too, again, through some of the Meher Baba stuff. There was, some of the Europeans that were hanging out with him in the 40s and 50s. They were passing around this book by this German guy, Paul Otto Hess, called Der Jüngste Tag, which is, I think it translates as the final day or something. And it was the first precursor, it was the first, I think, of this this is kind of like a Space Brothers trope almost of basically the idea that there is this, excuse me, photon ring that emanates from the galactic center, and that, as we as, in our particular part of the solar system are going around the galactic center, we pass in and out of it, and this lines up with the 26,000 year cycle, and the yugas and stuff like that. But what happens is for about 2,000 years, as we're passing through this photon ring, like everyone becomes like super psychic, or like
the golden age.
Yeah, right. And it's, but I think somebody else in Scandinavia like picked up on this, or somewhere in Europe picked up on this in like the 70s, and it became this big trope amongst like California New Age, the monastic ring, the photon belt.
Right. One of the papers that he put up on the suspicious observers is assessing the biomedical consequences of cosmic events on human health, which was put out by the Department of Space Science in Pakistan. And it says this paper explores the profound relationship between humanity and the universe, examining how celestial bodies and cosmic phenomena influence our lives beyond the familiar effects of sunlight. While significant research has been conducted on the origin and composition of celestial bodies, the potential impacts of cosmic events such as black hole collisions, supernova, pulsars, quasars, and cosmic radiation remain less understood. By integrating insights from diverse scientific disciplines, this study seeks to broaden our understanding of how these phenomena may shape our existence.
So there's still a possibility that they'll turn me into the Fantastic Four.
Right, exactly.
Oh man, I'm so hoping.
Speaking of Jack Kirby, he was onto it.
Yes, indeed.
I've got the body of the thing already. I just need the rocks.
Right? Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
I'm trying to see this. This was a fairly long paper, and I didn't read it yet. But yeah, it's just talking about how everything affects everything else, basically.
It's almost like we live in an ecosystem,
right? So the conclusion of the paper says. Solar bursts and cosmic radiation present significant challenges for both planetary exploration and human health. On a lifeless planet like Mars, the phenomena primarily pose geological challenges. However, Mars's weak magnetic field makes it particularly susceptible to solar and cosmic radiation, posing serious health risks for future human missions. Increased exposure to ionizing radiation could lead to a range of health issues, from acute radiation sickness to long-term risks such as cancer and cognitive impairment. Beyond Mars, the vast expanse of space is permeated by cosmic radiation, which can be even more intense than solar storms. Understanding the composition and intensity of this radiation is essential for ensuring the safety of astronauts on deep space missions. Additionally, the potential for cosmic radiation to transport biological materials, such as viruses, through space remains an area of concern that warrants further investigation. This review underscores the necessity for comprehensive studies on the biomedical consequences of cosmic events, emphasizing the importance of protecting human health as we advance our presence in space. As humanity looks toward the stars, it is imperative that we not only focus on the technological and exploratory aspects of space travel, but on the potential health risks posed by the cosmic environment.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Isn't there some kind of record of like a massive solar event? I want to say like something like 7,000 BC. They sort of, if I just have this vague memory of hearing about it at a conference, but
it's possible. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was something like that, some colossal solar event that would be completely destabilizing today. Not only would it wipe out the technology, it would have massive consequences.
Yeah, I believe
health-wise.
There was a massive solar flare, if I remember right.
Yeah, there was actually one not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. There was a Carrington event.
Event, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 1859. Which if people want to Google that, pull it up on Wikipedia. You're talking industrial age, so not quite the same effect, but that's
set teletypes
astronomical
on fire.
Time that was like earlier this morning.
Yeah. And that set teletypes on fire, burned wires, all kinds of stuff. We got hit with a solar storm in the 80s that blew up a power station in Canada. I want to say outside of Toronto. Luckily, it was an isolated burst because the thing is, we can't rebuild these power stations if the planet got hit with a big enough storm. We don't have them.
Right.
We don't have backups. Everything would just be down.
Yeah.
And of course, what really will take us down is just some bad computer update.
If we learned anything from the Cloudflare outage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was a flare, but not the one we expected. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. So, at the beginning of the show, we're talking about that green light. And the day after we recorded this, I drove down that road again. And this time I saw a green orb kind of dancing in the trees in the woods. And I was like, okay, where is that coming from? And so I stopped. And I looked on the right side of the road because the orb is on the left side of the road. And there's what I thought was a camera that they had installed. And it's actually one of those bird things. But it's playing. I mean, it's windy, a little bit windy, enough to move the trees. So it makes the orb look like it looks like an orb. It's a dot. And it's moving through the tree as the tree is blowing in the wind. It would have been really freaky had I not been able to find the source of that one. So yes, it seems like whatever that green light was is a bird scarecrow laser. I don't know why it was pointed at the trees. Maybe it's just because they're just setting them up. That looks like it was just being installed, but they're supposed to be aimed down the rows of the vineyard, just somehow scare the birds away. I don't know why that works. I didn't research it, but that is definitely what I encountered in that green light incident. And the thing about it is I figured that when I saw it, there was probably a prosaic explanation. I just couldn't figure out what it was. But not only did I have the light on camera, so I was accurate in my perception of the light, but then I saw in the distance, in the woods, around this spot where I just saw this thing the day after the recording, is where I saw the green orb in the distance. And I was kind of like, what is that green orb? And then it disappeared. So that was likely coming from another laser. But again, it gives me confidence in my own observations, even though there was nothing paranormal about it. But it did get me to drive down that road a bunch of times, and I did have that cool owl experience, which, again, not necessarily paranormal, but it's really cool when a giant owl takes off and flies alongside your car. So that was all worth it. Anyway, this is the mid-show break. Contact info, wheredidtheroadgo.com. That's where you can find everything. Email addresses, my Amazon wish list, everything. And thank you to everyone who has wished me a happy birthday. I appreciate that a lot. There's so many people wrote, not only on Facebook on my birthday, but when I put the video up about just the things going on. So many of you contacted me, left comments, etc. Thank you all. I am very lucky to have what I have in this show and in my life. All right. So yeah, other stuff. The Last Exit for the Lost, my music show, www.thelastexit.org. If you want to check that out, you're going to hear stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else. Plus, we do movie reviews and stuff throughout the show. It's an experience. As for a recommendation for this week, I am going to go with Small Town Horror. It's a podcast. It ended back in 2019. It did 4 seasons. The 4th season's only 4 episodes. It was kind of interesting. I enjoyed it. It was a fun listen. And the snippet here says, Ryan Jennings ran from the horrors of Creighton 18 years ago. Now he is coming back to face his greatest fears and search for answers. It's not the best podcast I've ever heard, but like I said, I enjoyed it. I think if you like mysteries, and I don't think there's anything paranormal in it, if I remember right, but it was pretty cool. So, yeah, that's my recommendation of this week. Also, I wanted to mention on the green light thing, the more stuff we get like this, the easier it is to not know when something is weird, because that light definitely looked weird. It did look like a laser, but it wasn't coming from any obvious source. And then, of course, I saw a green orb, which, is weird. I mean, that's something you don't expect to see. But here we have bird scarecrow lasers. And it's just so much of this stuff becomes a part of our culture and our world that determining when a weird light is actually a weird light is not that easy. And the first handful of people I showed this video to when I posted it to patrons and stuff, no one could really come up with a good explanation. It took Natalie to suggest that it was like a rave sort of thing, motion sensor. And she was not right, but she was close, because it was actually a laser thing, but it was a laser thing that scare away, birds. So I mean, this is the problem. When you see a light in the sky, or you see what looks like an orb, can you be sure it's not technology somewhere? I mean, this stuff didn't look connected to anything, and I still don't know where that initial beam came from. I haven't been able to find the scarecrow device that actually created that, and I look every time I go down the road because I figure it's got to be there somewhere, right? But maybe it's quite a distance away, and maybe not something I can see so easily. But anyway, that's just yet another monkey wrench in the whole what's weird and what's not. All right, back to the show. I am here with Brendan Storr, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Brendan Storr, no D, but close enough.
Yeah,
Brendan,
no D.
right. I knew that, and I just said it wrong anyway.
I've been called worse. I can. Brendan's fine.
Christopher Ernst and Super Saxon Man.
Well, hello.
Hello.
There was another article here I wanted to talk about, and then I saw a different one that I wanted to talk about. But there was one talking about how during certain phases of solar activity, particularly heart issues go up, like the incidence of heart attacks and people having heart disease flare-ups correlate with these solar upticks.
Yeah.
Which again is not something you tend to think about, but I can't find the article. This one is very interesting. It says study finds faces evolve to match names over time. So this was an actual scientific study, and it said in the study, 9 to 10-year-old children and adults were asked to match faces to names. The findings revealed that both children and adults correctly matched adult faces to the corresponding names, significantly above the chance level. However, when it came to children's faces and names, the participants were unable to make accurate associations. In another part of the study, a machine learning system was fed a large database of human faces. The computer recognized that the representations of the faces of adults with the same name were significantly more similar to one another than the representations of faces of adults with different names. Conversely, no significant similarity was found among children with the same name compared to children with different names. The researchers concluded that the similarity between a person's face and name results from a self-fulfilling prophecy. The facial appearance changes over a long period of time to align with social stereotypes associated with the name.
So how late can we change our names? Is what I need.
Yeah, right.
But that's fascinating. Like, I mean, because think about it's unconscious, but it's a level of control over literally what we look like.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. You guys know that whole that sort of mythology about how I think it was Ray Palmer. He had like some sort of spinal disease or something that he allegedly cured himself by every night going into this deep concentrated meditation and essentially willing himself to heal. I'm probably getting this wrong, but it's something like that.
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
Well, there was I haven't read it in a long time, but there's that huge book, Irreducible Mind, I think it's called.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it talks. I think it's from the first half of the 20th century, so it's not exactly cutting edge science. But I remember we were talking about these trials that were done where hypnotists were using, were sort of experiment. They were doing experiments on soldiers using hypnotism. And there was this one soldier who had some kind of skin disorder, and they found that by using hypnosis, they were able to reduce it considerably.
Oh yeah.
But what was interesting is at one point, the experiment was being viewed by his superior officer, and that officer loudly, within earshot of the subject, denounced the entire thing as being a pointless exercise, and the process never worked again.
Yeah. Yep.
Fascinating.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure that aligns with some of the placebo effect studies that have happened. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So, the end of this article says, we have demonstrated that social constructs or structuring do exist, something that until now has been almost impossible to test empirically. Social structuring is so strong that it can affect a person's appearance. These findings may imply the extent to which other personal factors are even more significant than names, such as gender or ethnicity, and may shape who people grow up to be.
For sure.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's
it's the environment in many ways that's shaping it,
true.
Yeah.
but it's like a social, psychological environment as it's, the construct. Yeah.
Well, you think if there's a predisposed reaction to a name, you're inviting everybody to have a certain predisposed reaction to you, then that's going to inform, the information you're taking in a certain way, the experiences you're taking in. So it makes sense how that's going to funnel you into a certain appearance or something like that.
Some guy named Dirtbag Johnson's listening to his talk going, yep.
Yeah, right. Change my name to Max Power.
Max Power.
Richard Harden.
There was another interesting one here. Go on.
Oh no, I was about to dive off into MST3K territory with all the red brown names.
Oh yeah, right.
I thought that's where Brandon was taking us. I was like, okay, I'll jump in.
I cannot find the thing I'm looking for because I'm looking in the wrong place. So this was something that a comment someone left, Martin Williams, who's made some very insightful comments on a lot of the YouTube videos for this show. And he says, you mentioned hypnosis, and that's why I brought this comment to mind, because I don't think we've addressed this. I wonder if you've come across the work of Stan Gooch. I know the name, but I don't think I've ever actually read his stuff, such as The Origins of Psychic Phenomena.
The Gooch.
Formerly called
Gooch.
Formerly called Creatures from Inner Space. Colin Wilson was a fan of his also.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He says, I think I've come up with an explanation for the Oz factor. When someone is hypnotized, if another person gives a suggestion to them, it often won't be responded to until the original hypnotist tells them they will respond to what that person suggests. This may be due to selective attention, as inductions often have phrases like "you're listening to the sound of my voice" or "concentrate on the sound of my voice." In the same way, when a person's brain waves entrain with the theta twilight state of resonant oscillators that are in ionic fields, he's lost me a little there, their attention becomes so locked into the experience that they simply don't notice other sounds. So what I think he's saying is that the brain waves are changing in such a way that they are blocking out things around them, and that is what is causing the Oz effect.
Yep.
And that's a very interesting proposition.
No kidding.
It's literally like our brains are being, it could be environmental, it could be the other doing it, it could be any number of things giving us that sense.
Yeah.
But I'm
Sorry. I'm still obsessed with the fact his last name is Gooch.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I think that's interesting because again, it's working in that sort of general area of looking at like human senses, or at least how, our consciousness interacts with the world as being, this set of filters really, and being very much, not holistic and completely all inclusive. Like, we are filtering things out. And this is talked about in science, in scientific studies all the time, is how, there is so much that we filter out in terms of senses. If you just look at, how different animals in the environment, how their senses and they interact with the world around them, that all the way up to, the whole holographic universe idea, which is where there's some sort of base reality, which is not what we see, that is underlying things. And I think that, that's, in many ways that helps, again, I think, prove this thing that keeps on coming back over and over again.
So this article from the Royal Society Open Science, language of fungi derived from their electrical spiking activity. And the abstract for this paper says, fungi exhibit oscillations of extracellular electrical potential recorded via differential electrodes inserted into a substrate colonized by mycelium or directly into sporocarps. We analyzed electrical activity of ghost fungi, enoki fungi. Didn't know there was ghost fungi, but that's awesome. Split gill fungi and caterpillar fungi. The spiking characteristics are species specific. A spike duration varies from 1 to 12 to 21, I assume, hours. It just says H, and an amplitude of 0.03 to 2.1 megavolts or MV. Yeah. We found that spikes are often clustered into trains, assuming that spikes of electrical activity are used by fungi to communicate and process information in mycelium networks. we group spikes into words and provide a linguistic and informational complexity analysis of the fungi's spiking activity. We demonstrate that the distributions of fungal word lengths match that of human languages. We also construct algorithmic and Liz-Zempel complexity hierarchies of fungal sentences and show that species S commune generate the most complex sentences.
And if you take 5 milligrams of psilocybin in complete darkness, fungi will talk to you.
Sorry, that was terrible, Josh Cutchin. I was trying to be Terrence McKenna.
I thought it was fantastic. It was a good job.
So, I mean, that's fascinating because it's, I mean, maybe it's anthropomorphizing this stuff too much, but, you know, thinking that they have a language that's similar to humans, but maybe not. Maybe it's just something, I mean, everything on this planet genetically goes back to the same point. So maybe we're all, even fungus is pushing toward a similar type of language.
Sure.
And we're just vastly underestimating what these things are. I mean, sci-fi has definitely grabbed the whole fungus thing by the tail at this point. You know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything from, Star Trek to Last of Us.
I say The Last of Us, yeah.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, I don't know if you guys watched the new Star Trek, but there's this whole, it's basically a fungi warp drive.
Well,
yeah,
that's not the new one.
Drive.
That's Discovery, which is now done, unfortunately.
Okay, Discovery's done. Yeah.
Because the newest one is, would it be Strange New Worlds?
Strange New Worlds, which is what I had fun watching some of those too. Yeah.
Aside from the musical episode, I thought it was great.
Oh God, no more musical episodes. Yeah, seriously.
I'm fine with no musical episodes, period, ever. Honestly.
Yep. I second this.
I mean, unless it's a show that's based on musicals, okay, that's fine.
Unless it's cop rock.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just thinking
it's a deep dive for
I don't know the last time I watched The Simpsons, but I realized in every episode of that season they had a musical number, and I'm like, why? Why do you have to have a musical number in every episode?
Right.
You're not even funny anymore. Why am I still watching you?
What was the cop rock song, the Baby Stealer, or the I'm blanking, but it was an episode of Cop Rock about a guy who would like steal and sell kids, and he had a whole song. It was
you're right.
Yeah. It was like the Baby Napper. It was wonderful.
I forgot that show ever existed. I don't think I ever watched a single episode.
I didn't at the time. I caught up with it, years later, the last couple of years. But what a wonder.
Yeah. That's probably why I don't remember it as well. Like I did watch it when it came out. Lord knows why. I should probably go back and revisit it.
Pre-internet, you were limited in what you could watch on television.
That's true.
And living in upstate New York, especially, we got 4 channels. I'm sorry, we got 5 channels. We got, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, and Fox, and that was it. And that's what you had to choose from. So you went and rented movies.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
You went to a store where you picked out a movie and hoped they had it, and have things changed?
Yeah, the name of the number you were talking about is Baby Merchant.
Baby Merchant. That's what it is. Yes. Yes. It was a better time.
So.
No kidding.
So this article is mysterious plasma bubbles have appeared over the pyramids. Now, I'm going to start with that sounds way crazier than it actually is. For the first time, China's powerful low-latitude, long-range ionospheric radar located on Hainan Island has detected plasma bubbles above the Midway Islands and perhaps more ominously, the pyramids of ancient Egypt. And then it says it's not aliens. Yeah, no kidding. Instead, these well-known space weather anomalies are called equilateral plasma bubbles, and they occur in the region of Earth's atmosphere known as the ionosphere. Here, the sun's UV light knocks electrons loose from atoms, forming a diffuse layer of ions extending from 50 to 400 miles above the surface. However, sometimes pockets of density irregularities form in the ionosphere and lead to a depletion of ions, which can significantly impact radio and satellite-based communication. So I was looking for the rest of this.
Everything on this episode is convincing me that my internet's just going to keep getting slower, and I'm not loving it.
So, I mean, anything with plasma bubbles is fascinating to me.
No kidding, yeah.
I guess we don't totally understand the phenomenon, but it says, so while China's Larid system might show some sort of military promise, of course, its potential benefit to science could surpass any battlefield advantage. But I mean, there's not, the fact that they have to say, no, it's not aliens is like, I mean, it's probably necessary, I guess.
I mean,
in the headline, no less.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see if those line up with any sort of reputable, like vile vortices or something like that. I mean, the pyramids, at least. Yes.
So this says, on August 27th, the Institute of Geology and Geophysics, a part of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, announced that Larid detected these plasma bubbles during a solar storm back in early November of 2023. With a detection range of nearly 6,000 miles, Larid can detect these bubbles as far away as Hawaii or east in the east or Libya in the west by blasting high-powered electromagnetic waves into the ionosphere, which they can bounce along vast distances. So if we're talking about things that have plasma intelligences, and we're just seeing spontaneous plasma bubbles appear during high solar activity, again, this might be a connection where if these things are not necessarily plasma intelligence, but are able to interact with us through plasma, and it was over the pyramids, which really probably had nothing to do with anything other than just eventually it's going to be over the pyramids.
I got to say, I'm not super comfortable with the notion of blasting anything into the ionosphere.
Right?
Like, there's something about that. Like, we can blast 6,000 miles. We can blast it into the ionosphere, and it'll come right back to us. And great! I love the idea combining the words blast and 6,000 miles. Like, I understand it's benign, but it just is upsetting.
It seems like a good way to cause more problems.
Right.
Yeah. Imagine if you're like a plasma intelligence and you say, man, some jackass keeps jabbing at me from way far away. I am not happy about this.
Yeah.
The thing is, we don't know so much of this stuff. Like we act like we do, but we are so ignorant of like our actual environment. I guess you could say we only know what we know about, but we don't understand what else might be there because we haven't discovered it yet, and the effects of what we're doing, what that could be doing to other stuff. I mean, we're talking about solar activity affecting psychic abilities. I mean, that if we're talking about that in the 80s, people would have been like, what? The sun doesn't do anything like that,
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at like how prevalent leaded gasoline was.
Yeah.
I mean, and that we're pretty sure now that was like creating a bunch of psychopaths.
Is that what did it?
One of the things.
And then back then they're just like, it's good for you. It makes you strong.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
system.
At one point, doctors just prescribed cigarettes. I mean, there was cocaine in your soda.
Asbestos everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, we're talking about bad things here, Soraya. Come on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Leave the cocaine, Coca-Cola alone, and the cigarettes, quite frankly.
Well, and, now of course microplastics too, and that's going to be something where we'll be dealing with that for the rest of our lives,
unless we find some way of nullifying them.
I think that it's so pervasive we may just stop manufacturing them, but I think it's just going to be a thing.
Well, we may stop manufacturing them, but they're not going to deteriorate unless we come up with, I don't know, an engineered fungus that eats microplastics,
That's a great idea, and we should let it loose without any,
well, that's exactly what would happen. It'd be like, no, it eats microplastics, and then we find out it eats everything else too and becomes the blob.
Right.
Yes.
I remember this article. I just pulled it up. It's from The Guardian from 2023. There was a type of zooplankton they found in sea and fresh water that can ingest and break down microplastics.
Yes.
But it actually makes it much worse because it turns them into nanoplastics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I heard about the first part of that. I did not hear about the second part of that.
Same here. Because I remember it being a good thing. Like, oh, good. There's something that. Oh, nope, never mind.
Yep. Like, oh, this is great news. Nope. No, it's not.
There's this complex web that we live in, and we don't understand most of it, and we just do things, and then we wonder why things get messed up. So one of the other things that I wanted to squeeze into this show here, and I talked to Jeremy Vaney about this a little bit, but especially it's not even just in the paranormal, but when we were talking about like when you were mentioning the hypnotism thing, and the guy, the hypnotism was helping him until he was told it wouldn't. the idea, our social constructs about what authority is and why we give certain people authority over us has always boggled me. I mean, maybe that's why I've always been sort of that, counterculture, sort of, rebellious type of a personality. But like, why does that person, why are we giving that person authority over us? Why are we looking at the government to tell us what UFOs are when the government usually only tells us things that are in its best interests?
Yes. And the flip side of that being, maybe don't listen to, I don't know, me about what you should do with your health care, or don't listen to Joe Rogan or something like that. Yeah.
Right. It is interesting, though, because you can look at the rigor, and hopefully it's good rigor to become a scientist, regarding a cancer or something like that, right?
Sure. Yes.
But, a lot of people in government that aren't, paid employees, but they're elected officials, like, they just got there.
Yeah.
A lot of times they weren't the most qualified person. They just had the best advertising. And so suddenly we attribute, this sort of like expert status to them when they can be dumb as a rock.
Yeah. And usually are.
Like
when they had the guy, what was he? The senator from Alaska, when they put him in charge of the internet bill or whatever, and he was like, "Oh, the internet's a series of tubes," and it's like,
of tubes.
Yeah.
Like, this is how your 80-year-old mind, puts this together of this concept you have no idea about, but you're being, pushed to get rid of things like, regulations on it.
Yeah.
Well, that's like listening to the hearings on TikTok.
Yeah.
Is there, so how many little Chinese men are in your phone stealing my data right now? You have to tell me.
Yeah.
Oh, for God's sakes.
But yet we at the same time, people will look to someone like Joe Rogan for advice that Joe Rogan is not an expert on. And then turn around and be like, well, why won't these scientists take us seriously? And it's like, why do you care if those scientists take you seriously on something that they're not experts on?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
think it's unfortunately, I feel it's that anything, even like legitimate altruistic research, is unfortunately, it's beholden to like corporations and profit is what's ended up happening. And when everything is about profit, you get a bunch of car salesmen is what you get, I don't know. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but
it's accurate. And that's the problem. Scientists need to produce results, and those results have to go sort of like in compliance with what's already established, because then if you come up contradictory to everything that's established, people are going to lose their jobs or they're going to lose money, so we can't do that, But there aren't a lot of avenues where people can just do science the way they want to do science and not have to worry about whether or not it's approved or not.
Yeah.
And then, of course, because of that, you get people who will be like, well, these people are lying to us.
Yep.
So why should we believe them? Well, listen to TikTok.
Exactly.
And we got everything. We know everything if we listen to all these TikTok videos. I've had a few people actually tell me that too.
I'm sure.
They think what they watch on TikTok is just absolute. It's pure, unadulterated truth. And it's like, okay, look.
Right.
I avoid TikTok.
How did they get there?
I avoid TikTok, but I know what they're relaying to me, and it's like, okay, you need to use more scrutiny on this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
You gotta, and I don't even want to say like you got to do your own research, but you really have to do actual research, not just Google the thing you want to be true.
Right, because that just turns into a confirmation bias.
Right.
I don't know. I think it's always worth to have like double scrutiny. Like, let me see who I'm listening to. Okay, they sound good on paper when I look at this or that, or whatever their bona fides might be. But it's even worth looking into. Like, well, what does a bona fide actually entail?
Yeah.
I had a buddy that went to school in Cambridge, and he would always chuckle about it because there's actually like 80 colleges in Cambridge or something like that, like astronomical.
Wow.
And he's like, everybody says they go to Cambridge, but it might be like the Cambridge School of Plumbing and Cambridge School of Electrical Design, and like that's not the same thing as Cambridge.
Yeah.
But when you put it on something, it just says Cambridge. And so it's one of those things you always have to even kind of like do your extra double take on a person's credentials or whatever.
I mean,
And
this is
see
like-
see where they work too. See where the money is coming from.
Yes.
Like see who's
Yeah.
funding their research. That's
Yep.
the big thing. See who's
Oh, you're
funding their
absolutely right.
research and see who they're attached to on, and I'm being serious, like in terms of skepticism, see what boards they're attached to, like what foundations they're on,
Well-
see who's funding their research. Yeah.
I think it's important too to ask yourself, what do I want to be true?
Right,
And
right.
am I only finding things that line up with that? Because I think you really have to be honest with yourself, right? You know,
Yes.
it's like, I
Very
just keep
good
finding
point.
things that tell me. It's like when you pray to God. God's like, no, you can do exactly that thing you're hoping to do. What luck? You know, maybe
Yeah.
we should examine that.
Yeah. Very good point.
Absolutely.
And I think Colbert was dead on when he came up with the concept of truthism or truthiness. That's what it was.
Truthiness.
Like if it
Yeah.
sounds true, it probably is, and it's like, oh God, this
Yeah.
really is how we are now, and probably always have been, but we see it more with social media.
Yeah. Oh, I think it is. Like, I'd be careful how I talk about this, but, think about, the things the United States has been involved in the Middle East and the amount of civilian deaths there that were around, whatever operations they were conducting. And then
Sure.
without regard to whether or not we should be doing that or not, right, for the people that they were after. But we never think about how many other people died. But that tells you how our information sphere is curated, because
Yes.
everybody's just kind of like, oh yeah, that was awful. Okay.
Yep.
And then you just go about your
Yep.
day.
Yep.
And again, not to be political or take a side or anything like that one way or the other, but, I'm very aware of what's happening to people in Palestine. But, I didn't care what was happening to people in Iraq. But I should have, right? Because these are all human
Sure.
beings. So
Well, it wasn't it wasn't shown to you. Like you weren't really
Right.
you
Yeah.
weren't really made aware of it. And even with
Yeah.
Palestine,
There
I
is-
mean, the
yeah.
stuff in Palestine isn't new.
no, it's not. It's not.
But a lot of people are now more aware of it, which is great. But it's taken a lot for that to be coming to people's awareness.
Right.
Yes, I think that's the big thing, is that it's, I think, and that's why I think a lot of people are, freaked out and searching for something, is because they're seeing that crack in the sort of the facade, of what they thought, what they thought their worldview's been rocked. And I mean that in like a legit way, just the safety of, I don't really have to worry about what's going on because, somebody good and responsible is taking care of things.
Right.
If you all of a sudden see proof that that's not the case, that's harsh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of time. So if you guys are willing, we can continue this in the Patreon because I have a few other things we can bring up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
All right, and where can people find you? Let's start with Chris.
If you want to see my film stuff, go to brightrectangle.com.
All right, and Saxon.
You can find me on Instagram under Super Inframan, and I may be on Facebook too. I'm around there a little.
I may have occasionally tagged you on there.
Yes. I'm best at replying on Instagram if you try to track me down.
And Brennan.
I'm largely the truth on most social media platforms, and you can find both my story show, Ghost Story Guys, and my fiction podcast, Fear Daily, everywhere fine podcasts live.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons for their support. Without you, this show would not be possible. And I want to give a shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review Presents, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Illuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Corey Nelson, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Brady, Sasha McHale, No One, Mark Shoemaker, Jonathan Frost, Ole Andre Olar, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, philosopher of mirrors, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sarah Horgan, Stacy Sherwood, Stevie Norman, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic podcast, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, the Esoteric Book Club podcast, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Varosh K, Victoria, Vincent Treewell, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Matthew Brown, Colin Karras, and Craig Sagastumi. Thank you all so very much for the support. If you enjoyed that, there's a Patreon segment continuing this conversation with all three of my guests. And if you want to become a patron, just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the big Patreon link. I want to welcome some new Patreons. Number 6, YODaddy76, Dapper Dan, Celtic Night Star, Marty Garza, and Beacon of Prelea. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you like the extra content. I also want to thank those of you who sent me some donations for my birthday. Among them, Stephen Emois. I think that's it. Emois. I'm guessing on that. If I'm saying that wrong, I'm very sorry. David Martinelli, Matthew McCartney, and Michaela Urban. Thank you all. I appreciate it very, very much. See you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.
Want to continue spooky season after the 31st? Would you like to dive deeper into the world of the paranormal, the occult, cryptozoology, and other unexplainable topics? Then the Strange Realities Conference is the right one for you. Live and online in Nashville, Tennessee, November 1st and 2nd at SIR Nashville, and November 3rd online only. Strange Realities Conference 2024 will feature presentations by Tim Banal, Nathan Isaac, Kendall Lackey, Brent Rains, Micah Hanks, Ren Collier, Joshua Cutchin, Recluse, Nevaeh Terry, and Steve Berg as your Master of Ceremonies. Online with presentations by Soraya Ascath, Timothy Runner, Katie Andrews, Robert Guffey, Greg Bishop, and Becky Ann Galantine. Tickets are $70 in person the whole weekend or $30 online and are available at strangerealitiesconference.com. Don't miss this amazing opportunity to